I'll take that as a yes since he's on mute.
Yes.
Okay, good evening all, and welcome to our December meeting of Community Board One's Waterfront Parks and Cultural Committee. I want to first acknowledge co-chair Andrew Zelter and our trustee, head of land use planning, or is it just planning, Diana Sweetie. So we are ready to roll. So let's get going with the agenda. First up, we have Wari Price from the Battery Conservancy. I think a lot of you know Wari. She's been involved in running that park for many years, and she's going to provide us with the latest news on what's going on there. So without further ado, Wari, you're on.
Thank you, Paul, and nice to hear from all of you tonight. It's been a while. It was before, I think we were talking to you back in March when we had the groundbreaking for the playscape. It's been a long time coming, and it's really been our big morale booster all during these months because we've only been shut down for only 30 days. So our team, the city, permitted this as one of the capital projects to keep going forward. And so what I'm going to do tonight is give you a status report of that construction, but also talk a little bit about the conditions in the park and the sense of where is the Battery Conservancy, which is totally a nonprofit and is dependent on private gifts to run this park. We get no city money or funding. So I thought it was a good moment to give you some ideas. And then I have one idea that I would like to have to explain to you and get your support for this way we're trying to manage the park and keep the standards we've set in place. So to begin with, we're going to start out with the Battery Playscape and to give you some visual updates to the sand creatures. There's a huge sand element. Diane, you want to move the PowerPoint, or do you move it? There we go. So you're going to see the moles underneath the big sand pit are wonderful molds of different fish crustaceans for children to discover. We have amazing fences and benches, playhouses and granite slides, and shade structures, which are very unique, and a 10,000 plant nursery. The Battery Conservancy is funding all the horticulture. It's one of the first playgrounds in New York City that will have gardens in it. And so we are funding all the plants, and we decided that we, for economics as well as being sure everything will be our, toxin-free materials, we've established a 10,000 plant nursery, and you'll get to see a little of that. So let's get started, Diane. Let's show those sand creatures. First of all, look at the overview. This shows you the scale of this playground. There is no doubt this is going to be the largest playground in downtown New York. You can see it in its relationship to sea glass, which has also been a great asset for families to enjoy. And it's walking right through there, you're going to the urban farm. So it's exactly in the area where our schools are coming, where families are coming, and you can see it. We start with the bluff. If you look at the southern end of the overview, that tall wall, that's the bluff where the 5 slides will come off. We go to the sand pit. We then go to the gardens and the tree houses. The show box takes you up into the gardens to where we meet the restaurant. So let's show you certain elements that this gives you a sense of the rendering. Up on the left are the slide mountain. This is the sand play area with the water. And then look to your right, those are tree houses. So the creatures that have been molded is the next slide. There they are. and they're huge. Look at the octopus. If any of you haven't seen My Teacher, the Octopus Teacher, it's a wonderful Netflix film about this wonderful underwater photography and octopus. But this is a 4-foot big mole that's molded into the concrete underneath, 8 to 10 inches of sand, so that they're all very soft edges, so no stubbed feet or anything. But all of these, the horseshoe crab, but the octopus is 4 feet in diameter. So these aren't small, little, delicate things. They're 3 feet for the flounder, 2.6 for the horseshoe crab. The scallop shell is a foot in diameter, and the spider crab 3 feet. So they're quite large, and they're all about, so much of this playground is about spontaneous discovery during the play experience. Um, and as you know, we've got the oyster restoration project right off the waterfront. So we really want children to have an accumulative science experience as they move through the park, from coming to the urban farm, going on a ride on Sea Glass, now in the playscape itself. This entire park was created after Sandy, so it has a lot of resilience, rainwater reservoir, rain garden reservoirs, and the sense of we are a waterfront playground. So of course the life of the sea is going to be a big part of it. So that's all been at the developed, and when it's poured, all these molds will be ready. The next one. Also, when we look at the entrance, we wanted our entrance to really have, as you know, many playgrounds and school yards are down to 4-foot fences. You will not see any more 8-foot large fences in playgrounds or in parks anymore. So these are undulating, but up to 4.5 feet. And they are to talk about water. So as you see them walking in, and you don't really know what is that white fence there, we have a rendering of a prototype that was sent out, and it's the next slide. Uh-oh, where did Diane? There we go. So you can, what I wanted you to see is the sense of water, and this kind of contemporary way of looking. They could be clouds, they could be water, but it's the punctuation of these dots that give you an image. So they're incredibly engaging and inspiring, artistic, and they do the job of keeping children safe. There's only one gate into this almost 1.5 acre playground, and same way out. So this is your main and only entrance to the playground. And it will be like 30-40 feet at the entrance. Then it goes to a chain link as we go, and then it's filled with gardens on the outside as well as the inside of the playground. So, but this is kind of an interesting way of announcing this is a waterfront playground. The next piece, running off the same motif of the punctuations, is the benches. You'll see here the woman sitting there on these circular benches. Some will have backs, some won't. And then the tree houses that it flows into, all surrounded by gardens. And many of these areas are for water retention and like little mini creeks. And as the architects on the project said, the most fun time to be here is after a big rainstorm, because the way the water moves through the space is very much a part of this environment. So let's look at those benches. Diane, you can go the next. There we go. So they are serpentine. They move through different areas. And as you see, again, the way the light comes through, there is this watery cloud-like sense. They're very durable. There's a flat surface, so you can have your lunch beside you. And we think that there'll be a nice sense of the design from fences to benches. So that's our prototype bench. It's very, very comfortable. It has a back that concaves in. It's just incredibly comfortable, as also very practical. Next one. And then there's some of the tree houses. You'll see the rope bridge over on your left. As you saw the rendering, it's up. Nothing touches the trees, but you feel like you're in the canopy of the tree. The wood structure on the right is one of the ground level playhouses. There are three on the ground playhouses and three suspended up high above into the tree level, even though we don't touch the trees, but 20 to 25 feet above the ground will be other playhouses. This is already here on the site. This was all manufactured at a German facility that has a lot of playgrounds, did a lot of work in Brooklyn Bridge Park. So Parks Department's very happy with their work. The Bluff, which is quite unusual, there's only one other park in New York City. It's in Central Park called the Billy Johnson Park that has began this granite slide. These are giant slides from 18 feet to the tallest down to 15 down to toddlers. And the little toddler slide, one's wider and one's more narrow, so a parent can slide side by side with a young child. And we've been up in the Adirondacks twice, choosing the stone that we truly felt was in keeping with these gardens. You see all the plantings and the scrambled, all those stones have been chosen, all these plants you'll see in a moment. But you see the bench kind of on the left circling that garden. But let's look at we were already out in Long Island with the fabricator. This is the quality of the stone for the different, these are the side-by-side slides. They'll be larger. These are for us just to see and for the fabricator to show us he can do these edges. So these are not, they're not that narrow. This is to give you a sense of the quality of the stone itself and the fabricator's ability to do our designs. And you can go to the next one. You can flip through these again and another. They have a blue color and there's a little bit of a silver flake in this that'll reflect light. It's called a high hone finish. So they're not, this is not what we chose. See the high polish, we're going to a high hone. So it's as slippery and it's great for sliding, but it's a little more subtle. They also don't retain heat the way metal slides do. So we think these will be really wonderful for the summer as well as, all seasons. But the durability, the sense of being on stone, as the people in the Adirondack Park are very proud of the 1.4 billion year old stone that they are, working with. So I think this is where we teach our science classes. This is where geology plays a part, but it's also just going to be great fun. That's the slides. Shade, it'll be quite a while till our trees grow and shade this area. So we've developed these wonderful umbrella panels, and they have a mirrored stainless steel surface on the backside. If any of you were in Madison Square Park for the Teresita Fernandez art project, which were all these mirrored elements and a wonderful channeled feeling through the park, these kind of are inspired, but these are very organic kind of bean shaped elements that will give us the shade we want. And as you see from the prototype, the next slide, it's great fun. This is a piece that they did and sent to us. And I wanted you to see see how beautiful the sky looks, see the trees. They will also reflect the activity of little bodies moving around on that bluff. So they give us the shade, but they also give us light and a sense of action and reflecting the plant material that's there. And birds, insects, who knows what will be seen as you walk up this bluff. But we think this will add again something that will bring a little bit of magic and fun to the environment. Okay, the next one is plants. This is the first New York City playground that is filled with plants. And as you know, we love our gardens. They've always been an important part of what we've done at the Battery, and no less now our final project, the Battery Playscape. And so I want to show you our nursery. These plants will all have a year in growth. They're all lined up. They are outside in the woodland near the urban farm, and our horticultural team has done an incredible job of caring for them all the last 7 months, and now they've all been bedded down with mulch for the winter. But we're climatizing the plants as well, ensuring there's no toxins, no synthetic fertilizer. That's our other thing. Look how much the growth. This is just the growth in 6 months. Those are red um, 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 bush dogwoods. And so the sense that our horticulture, we take everything so seriously that we want to be sure our plant material is healthy and toxin free. And the way to guarantee that is to build your own nursery and start these out from small, either small plants or seed. So that's our plant materials, and there's shrubs as well as plants. So there'll be about 10,000. This is a climbing hydrangea. And we've gotten 20 cuttings from one of our donors that this gives you a sense of their fall color. And this is the concrete sides of the bluff that you will walk along, a child will, as they go up to the 20-foot promontory. And I love the juxtaposition of these and the built environment. And then Mother Seton's, the Holy Rosary Church, kind of tucked in our the only historic house we have left downtown that remembers how we were in the 17 and 1800s. So this vine, we have 20 cuttings from it, and it will be grown to give this wall a texture and a sense of nature, not just of structure. Next. So that's our nursery. I wanted to give you a status report of what we suffered during Isaias. We lost or damaged over 50 trees. So Diane, just scroll through these very quickly. It was devastating to us to deal with this loss, and we had to do it all ourselves. Parks came in to help us a little bit get stuff out of the way for sense of falling. But what it did to our gardens, what it did just completely throughout the park, our shade canopy was a devastation to us. But there'll be other understory plants that will come forth now that we have more shade. We are thankful none of the large trees fell on sea glass. They could have damaged the building. So we're always looking at the positive side, which is that we suffered, but nothing else there was no damage that we had to go and rebuild sea glass or rebuild our kiosk. We've always been open. The park, as you know, doesn't have any gates or fences to close. So our team has been an amazing, devoted group all through the pandemic. And also we knew at the school closes that the urban farm would be dormant. And we had already hired one educator for that. And I don't know if any of you know Dan Barber and the Blue Hill and Stone Barns up in Patanico. But he was creating something called the Kitchen Farming Project because he was upset that out of work cooks were just not doing anything except binging on television. And he decided he was going to teach them how to build farms. And so he called me and said, can we have a farm? And I said, Dan, you're already an advisor on my urban farm. You don't remember 5 years ago. It'll be almost 10 years soon. Next year, our 10th anniversary. So we partnered with Dan Barber and Stone Barns to be a part of their kitchen farming project, which was it was a global initiative. It was his way of saying, I want cooks to really understand where food comes from and why food grown responsibly and organically tastes better. And because I don't want anyone to source commercially. They really should know the value. So we said, we believe that also. That's our mission statement. So we had 20 cooks and these are line cooks. These are not chefs. These are line cooks that came from our 5 boroughs and farmed with our team all during the spring and through into the summer. And we'll see some photos of them. And that's our team that was working in the gardens um, and was happy that they weren't dormant and that the grounds keep going. Diane would just go through these. Um, no, there's one, there should be one before, well, table green, this is, yeah, the one, yeah, show the furrows. Sadly, Table Green will no longer be in business. It's very sad. They just could not keep their staff funded. So we'll be looking for new food vendors for our kiosk. But this shows you the kitchen farming project that it could have been just dormant furrows, but it wasn't. It was producing food. And keep going, Diane. And this is our group. We had 20. This is some of the 20 cooks, the line cooks that had wonderful. They did everything from preparing the beds to cultivating the plants to harvesting the plants to understanding how to be organic farmers. And then they got to work on recipes and cook with the food. Most of our food, 1,200 pounds, was donated to the Coalition for the Homeless. 400 were used by the cooks. We also want to be sure that, you know, if this may happen again if the schools aren't able to, and I think Dan would like to continue this partnership um, if we don't have our schools using it. And I know you have pantries and food kitchens right here in our own neighborhood that we don't have to go to Coalition. I think Coalition for the Homeless is great, and I hope, but I really would like to be sure our own neighborhood is fed first, and then whatever we can't utilize locally. And I hope, Paul, you and your committee can help us be sure that if we continue, and we, it does look like we may do it in 2021, that you bring us to partner with people that really could utilize this produce. So that's one thing I wanted to be sure was something we talked about.
There may be some new homeless people being relocated here, so we'll keep you posted.
Okay. The lawn is the thing I'm really coming to you for tonight, because the Woodlands, the Forest Farm, the Battery Labyrinth, and Korean War Memorial have, had various levels of use. We're happy that the Battery has been there for families that need to be out and about, but we've also seen enormous amount of damage during this process for smaller areas. So we're going to take you through and show you our relationship with dogs and dog owners for the last 10 years has been very productive, and many people have been incredibly responsible. So we'll go look at what we do now. At this time of the year, the lawns are closed. They need to be reseeded, and because they are so fragile during the winter months, the best is to let them rest. So that was our sign that are up on our lawns now. And the same with this is the woodland area. But in the good other times of the year, but you can see the off-leash dog areas and the times for those. We have worked incredibly hard with a lot of staff work to move our dog leash areas and circulate around different areas. So when one gets worn out, it's taken out of action and we go somewhere else. The people downtown are very pleased with our relationship with them. But as we see, uh, everything is closed for the winter, which is normal. Where we saw a lot of overuse and kind of owners that weren't maintaining their dogs in a good way was in the Labyrinth and in the Forest Farm. The Forest Farm is our edible farm, and we do classes there with students. The Labyrinth is a walk of contemplation, but basically this is the area that I'm going to be focused on tonight to ask for your support. It's really a part of our urban farm. There's a list in this presentation of all the edible plants that are here that children can go in there and eat. And there's the list of 48 different edible plants. This is the plans for the garden, and they are grown there. And what we're finding is that overuse, because we decide to leave the garden open. Sometimes before we had locked the labyrinth and people had a special code to get in. But during the pandemic, we just opened everything. We wanted to serve. And as you can see, as you'll go through these, it's taken a really uh, uh, hit from overusage. And it's very hard to maintain a small area with a lot of dog traffic. And especially when we've got so many other areas in the park to use. I don't know if it's because these are right on the border of Battery Park City and it made it a little bit more convenient to just stop off and then go back to the southern part of Battery Park City or what, but we have seen a devastation here that we've never seen before. And it's kind of beyond repair at this point. We are going to do our best, but I also want to let you know we do not have the resources we had over the last 10, 20 years. Uh, Donations are down. People aren't able to give. This is the area around the Korean War Memorial, which is also having a really tough time. And this is not the way in the past we have maintained this park. But I'm coming to you tonight to ask you to be a partner in helping us maintain, but also think about ways. This is the way it was before. This is the plant material. Look how green the labyrinth was. Um, it was controlled more, and it was basically used just exclusively for the children. But it's what we believe is our duty to give back to the community. So what we're asking tonight is we're asking your support to outreach the community for volunteer help at the Battery. We have great people, but we need other hands. So whatever your outreach ability is, to say volunteer at the Battery, it's a great nonprofit and it does a lot for our community. The other is communicating with all dog owners the need to respect fragile landscapes, and that that to stay on a hard surface and get a good walk and a lot of good exercise is preferable. We would like to make the Forest Farm Labyrinth Garden a dog-free zone. We do not have that at this time. I know in Battery Park City, there are various dog-free zones, but we would like to make this area, because of the edible garden, as well as knowing the scale of it, it makes it very inappropriate for overuse and by too many dogs. So we're asking you tonight to support our hopes that a dog-free zone will help us be able to restore this quicker and to maintain it going forward. I have checked with Parks Department, and because they are the authority on what happens in the park, and they have given permission for this to be considered dog-free. But I don't want to do anything. I've always come to the community board over the past 26 years and talk to you about our problems, talk to you about our mission. So it's with you as a partner I am bringing this situation, which is the first time I've come to talk about problems and beyond our reach and deterioration beyond what we can afford to repair. So I am seeking your help, but also your understanding that it's a tough time for us, and we are totally dependent on private gifts. We have no agreement with the city to do this work and receive funding. And as you know, we do everything in the park. We do not take the trash away at night, but we maintain everything. 240,000 square feet of gardens and the lawns. And I think the quality that we've set by the way this park has been transformed over the last 27 years is testament to what our hopes are for it going forward. But so that's what I'm asking for you tonight to consider, and that also your outreach to the community about this situation at the Battery would be helpful also. That's it. Any questions? I can't hear you, Paul.
Who keeps muting me? Not me. Okay, let's go through committee members who have their hands up. Let's start with Andrew Zelter.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Lori. Kudos to your continued stewardship and vision of this park. It's really amazing. And thanks for that update. I guess a couple questions as it relates to the playground design itself, and then I have a question regarding the dog issue. But as it relates to the playground itself, on some of the images, there appears to be, I don't think it is, but the image suggests there's a loose stone surface.
No,
Uh,
stones. No. Are you talking about those huge boulder steps?
No, it's sort of, it lines the pathway. If a picture came up, I'd be able to point to it. But what is the surface material for the
No.
active areas?
No. First of all, a lot of it is poured in place soft safety surface.
Got it. Okay.
City playground. We have had many safety experts with us all along the way. You remember, we've been working on this since 2012, 2013. So
Right.
it's 7 years, and the surfaces are the following. There's that spongy, see, are you talking about like that gray surface there? That is all soft surface.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
it looks like petals, but it's rubber.
Got it. Okay. So that answers that.
And then it goes to a composite, which is little pebbles in concrete.
Right.
But there's
Okay.
nothing loose. The only loose thing is the sand in the sand pot box.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. My next question related to the sort of playground design. There were some images that showed interaction amongst the plantings in the gardens.
Right.
Do you have any concerns with that interaction possibly resulting in damage to the plantings or the gardens?
You know, I think that our sense is children play in nature. As you look at the child on the slide mountain, see the little railing system that kind of buffers the plants to the staircase?
Yes.
It's our sense that uh, that certainly the garden that's encased with the benches on the left will have some sense of fencing. You're not running through those gardens.
Right.
In the trafficked areas, we basically led the activity to be not in the garden. The garden, you can go look at insects there, you can sit there, but that sense of active running, when you're down below, you want to get up there and slide down again. So we're giving you a garden-free access way. There's a fabulous ramp on the left side that takes you all the way up so that a wheelchair, see the wheelchair at the top there? That is
Yes.
totally handicap accessible. So there's a big ramp that takes you up, and then there are these climbing steps. I felt that children have respected the urban farm so completely. The Boss Gardens thrive. No one destroys those. We believe nature is so healthy. We're trying. And if it's totally impractical, we'll come up with something else to give us some sense of green, a different kind of a shrub, a holly, something that can't be tried to be more durable. But most of the plants you see, they're not precious. They're grasses, they're shrubs. You know, we're perennial gardeners. We don't do, little tiny petunias here. So
Right.
I hope I think it's a concern we've all thought about, but I refuse to let it stop bringing nature into play. And
Great.
it'd be an experiment. And
Yep.
we're there. We planted. That's why we wanted hardy stock. That's why we're spending a year and a half cultivating our own nursery. So we don't get
Okay.
plants. We need
Right.
strong plants, no toxins. So
And then,
go ahead.
sorry. And then just one last question, because I don't want to take up too much time. So first, you have my full support on the dog issue, but secondly, when you are seeking volunteer support, are there any particular skills or needs that you have in terms of volunteers, or is it just basically help and assistance throughout the park?
The wonderful thing is we've been lucky to get volunteers that want to learn gardening skills, and they come over and over. So an experienced volunteer is what we're looking for, but we'll get you the experience you need. And we have 200 volunteers now that really we can call in for special things or come every other week or come every week, and they develop a skill set. So we just need people that want to work outdoors and keep their hands busy. And there's always, loading, unloading until you understand cutback and how you divide a plant. So we're not really saying you have to have had gardening experience to come volunteer. We really need everyone to help us, whether it's clearing out branches, to hauling stuff, washing down benches, oiling the benches, sanding the benches. A lot of it's just good manual labor.
Got it. Great. Thanks so much.
Just a quick point on that. By coincidence, the community board last month met with the person who helps us do outreach to try to attract volunteers to our local parks. We realize that not just Battery Park, but unfortunately, many of the parks are going to be short-staffed for some time to come. So we are going to work with parks to try to emphasize the need for volunteers to get involved in helping their neighborhood parks. So we will certainly be doing that, and we'll be happy to work with you, and hopefully we find some people for you.
Be a big, big help to us, because we just don't have, my office is down to 4 people and we usually have 8. And we're doing all the development ourselves, writing all the grants by ourselves, because we didn't want to furlough, and we haven't furloughed anyone in the park. All of our workers, everyone in the operations, the maintenance people, the gardens, the horticulturalists, we haven't furloughed anyone. So we're, and it just be a big help. So thank you for that, Paul.
Okay, well, we'll keep working on that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going in order. I have Kathy Gupta next.
Hi, Wari, and let me add my thanks for the wonderful job you've been doing. And you do have my support on the dog issue as well. I was wondering, though, Battery Park, assuming many of the dogs are coming from Battery Park City, there is a dog owners association. The founder is actually a member of the community board. And I'm wondering if you've had any interface with them. Have they been helpful? And if so, on the public education side?
I have not. I called Allison Simcoe because 10 years ago she was so active. And I don't think she's as active now, but I'm happy to meet with them or tell them the situation and get their cooperation. I think the people that are organized are very responsible. The groups that have been in FIDI have, we've told them about this, and they said they would, they think that's a good idea. And these are ones that have enjoyed the dogs off leash in the woodland area and see the effort that takes. And, when I've seen, people come in with really big dogs, they kind of are timid, like, are dogs able to come in here? So I think the scale of the place does not dictate this is a place that, lots of dogs belong. So I think most dog people haven't, I don't think it's, certainly it's being overused, as you can see from the deterioration, but I have not, I don't know the Battery Park City Dog Association, and I'd like to be able to get their cooperation and their help.
I'm sure the person on the board here is Jeff Galloway, and I'm sure they'd be happy to work along with you, make it a win for everybody.
Great, thank you for that.
We could get you contact info if you're interested.
No, Paul, I have always come early and often to the community board because, as you know, I was head of a community board on the Upper East Side for 15 years, community board 8. So I really feel so obliged to, make this something that is not about just a nonprofit and a partner with parks, but really that we are part of this community. And when we design things, we're thinking about programming and what can serve the community. So I think this is important. And that's why I said, I just don't want to do this and people just are surprised. I really want to get your support, get your outreach so that it becomes a collaboration of work to keep the park in the best possible uh, uh, condition. And this is something we believe will help us be able to maintain this for the children, to be able to continue to use it as the edible farm, and for people that need a quiet place of walking.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have some further conversation about the dog issue after we go through the question and answer. Let's go to Joe Lerner next. Oh, are you finished, Kathy? Okay. Joe, unmute him or unmute yourself.
Right?
What? You're good.
Okay. So I was a volunteer at Battery Park City for about 15 years as a gardener. So how does one go about volunteering? I haven't seen anything out there.
Well, if you go to thebattery.org and say volunteer, you're going to find out a lot about it.
Well, excuse me.
Thebattery.org.
Time out. People are not going to go typing in Battery Park volunteer. I think you have to distribute something also as well. Find some places where you can put posters up or whatever. But, you know, I'm ready and willing and able to volunteer once again for garden work.
Give me your email, Diane. Diane, send me Joe's email. I'm getting you signed up next week, Joe. We'd love to have.
Wonderful.
Absolutely, I'll do that for you.
Mission accomplished.
Great.
Okay. Joe, you done?
Yes.
Good work. Thank you, Joe. Okay. Wendy Chapman.
Yeah, this has been a great presentation. One of the things that always comes up is, do you accept volunteers who are minors? Because so many of the city agencies and other places, you have to be over 21. Does it matter if you know, do you have any age restriction? Obviously, they could come with.
Usually when we have our time in the park, young people are in school. And so we have tried to do some things on weekends to get families to come to the farm and things like that. But usually it's a Monday through Friday morning.
Oh, I see. So you don't have any weekend hours?
No, we've done some, but our core volunteers are all Monday through Friday when we have more people in the park.
Right. That makes sense. And I think to Joe's point, you could make a really beautiful sign.
Mm-hmm. We've just done 2 fabulous posters.
Fabulous.
Hong and Peter Minuit Plaza in those glass cases that are there at the Select Bus. And we've got a couple of areas. We also have signage in the park that asks for volunteers. But if you can tell me where we could put, because we've designed them, where we could put them somewhere else in your office or somewhere else that you think is visible, we'd be happy to do that.
You know, I have this idea that it should be actually a sandwich board as people are walking around, and especially during the, you know, so many people go through that area, to your point, to clear their heads and to just appreciate how incredibly beautiful the park is. Mm-hmm. And I see this as a sandwich board in the middle of one of your wider paths to say, do you love our garden? Come volunteer with us. You know, something like that. And you always do things in such a classy way. It's, you know, I know you'll style it up or something, but it will be a sandwich board that will be.
I like that. Well, it's easy to take in and out too, Wendy.
Yeah, I think that the sandwich board will also, I think you can explain what's going on. I think you can honestly say, you know, our city is suffering and we have major cutbacks. We need you. Right. You know, people sometimes want to be asked, you know, and especially if we say, hey, listen, you know, I mean, I was looking at that and I think you've got a combination of weather. You know, it's been wet and things like that. And then too much use when it's wet, it gets bad fast, as we know from the ball fields and other things. But I think if you explain to people why the gardens don't look the way they do, that also is a call to action. And I think many of us right now, you know, it helps explain things, especially because people are nervous about, you know, what's going to happen with our great city and our parks and that type of thing.
Right.
So, but what you've done is great, and it breaks my heart, those photos of all the trees that were down.
I know.
So,
one
okay.
step forward, two step back, Wendy.
That's right.
Back.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. We have Rosa next.
Hi, Wari. I just want to say thank you for everything that you and all of your friends do, because we enjoy the park so much. So thank you. And we're also super excited to go check out the playground. We've been like eyeing it for forever, it feels like, hoping that it will get finished before my son gets too big. So we're super excited about that. And I think I'm going to try reaching out to two PTAs that I know and see if we could try to get some community volunteers. But I'm also wondering, CB1 actually sends out an email sort of blast or update. And I'm wondering if maybe, is it possible to do like a little thing about, you know, volunteering at the park on the update? Because I think those are people who are already, you know, community and civically engaged. And so it might find a good sort of audience to try to get the participation up. Also, I'm fully in support of the no dogs at the labyrinth. We actually went for the very first time this year to the labyrinth. We'd always sort of thought it was like not allowed for us to go in, and it was absolutely lovely. And then we went recently, and it was really, really sad. And I hadn't realized that it had been getting way overused until then. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Detta, did you want to speak? You want to unmute yourself if you do want to speak. Otherwise, I'll proceed and come back to you. Okay. I see we have one person from the public who has a comment, and that is Carrie Davidson. Tell us who you are and let us know what you want to say.
Sure, thanks. Carrie Parker Davidson. I'm with Friends of Duane Park. And one additional source for volunteers, Wari, you might reach out to the middle and high school students. They have community service hours. And even though we're in a pandemic, I think those students are potentially a source for volunteer work. So LMC, Millennium High School, those have been good sources of volunteer work for some of the parks downtown. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is Andrew Zelter. Just on that point, I'll follow up with you. We're part of the Youth and Ed Committee. We can help you with that outreach so that you don't have to necessarily track down each school individually. We can approach them in a coordinated manner on your behalf.
That would be wonderful. You know, David, we would never have had the urban farm if it wasn't for 8 students from the environmental club wanted a vegetable garden. That was 10 years ago. Those 8 students now have risen to 7,000 students a year come to the urban farm. So I have great fondness for Millennium High School and for that collaboration. And so it seems like such a good thing to now reach out for them to be involved, because they're the ones that came up with the idea for the program.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Alice Blank.
Hi, Wari. Thank you so much. It's great to see you. Wow, what an incredible, work you do is just extraordinary. And I just a shout out to also Star Whitehouse for I think everyone knows, I hope everyone knows who's involved in that playground, I think, as I recall. It's just extraordinary. Anyway, I'm going to follow up with Rose's terrific suggestion about the newsletter, maybe putting something in the newsletter if that's possible, the CB. And then I was just going to suggest, Paul, that maybe we consider a resolution on the dog thing. I know nothing about dogs, but it might be something that is worthy of, having a resolution. But I was just going to take advantage of the moment, and this may not be the right moment, but at some point it would be really helpful to know and get an update on some of the other critical aspects of the battery. What's going on in terms of the resiliency plans, Pier A. I think you might, there's we've heard things. I know you had some grand plans for the Castle Garden, and what's happening with the Coast Guard building. There's so much in your little sector there that it would be terrific. I don't know if tonight's the night, but if we could soon learn about some of those ideas, or if there's anything you want to share tonight, it would be great for the community to learn more about that.
Well, the
Thanks.
thing that's, I think, most active of all the things you just brought up is knowing that the restaurant concession has vacated Pier A with, it's my understanding, with not any hope of returning. So I can remember when we tried to get the screening on that first floor many, many years ago. So I immediately called the National Park Service and said, hey, you're getting a new concessionaire. Let's try this again. Because I think that the restaurant there, what their hopes were, they never really, is my understanding, fulfilled their lease agreement, even before the pandemic, even in the heyday of restaurants. So it's a problematic building. Just the scale of it, the long narrowness of it. And if this could become a place where we could only embark, disembarking, because it's not big enough to have coming and going. You get on the boat, you get off the boat at one place there. So if we could just get the screening done in the base, get onto the boats there, and then bring everyone back and disembark at the battery, which got the beautiful gardens, got the fountain going, got sea glass. We have a lot to kind of welcome people from around the world. I think it would free up finally and get us our waterfront back. We need to move those tents because resilience, we got to pull up that promenade 6 feet. So those tensile structures have to go. I don't want to hurt economic development through tourism by, saying, well, we can't do the screening here anymore. Where are they going to take the tourists now? So this is a little window of opportunity, and I've talked to Battery Park City Authority. They are dealing right now with the legal aspects of what their rights are as the lessor with the lessee that's now in default. And they've had a very productive conversation with the superintendent of Statue and Ellis, who will be the key person lead. So behind the scenes, I've started at least getting people to talk to each other, because I believe fervently that the community would be served by opening up the 1,500, wonderful feet of waterfront that's been totally compromised by the visual aspect as well as the physical aspects of those screening tents. And we would get it to a point that, I'm not saying the whole building would be, it's only the base would be for screening. It is a heritage area. I know the Park Service is interested in education, doing more in the building for education, for some sense of understanding all the other parks we have in New York State that are heritage areas. It is a state heritage area. This is run by Battery Park City Authority, a state authority. So I'm hopeful that the state aspect, that we could bring in state parks. We have Statue Ellis, we've got our screening there, and the Battery, this birthplace park, could be kind of take a deep breath again. The promenade cannot stay at the level it is right now. So we have to start thinking. So I have been proactive. Nothing's set. I think I respect the authority. They have to go through their process. But I have alerted the other people to this, that please let this be something you I'm sure they'll do a request for proposals, but to me, if the community of all of us can see how this would be helpful to our economic development through tourism, as well as something that's good for education for our neighborhood, for freeing up public space, which is getting our promenade back. I know a lot of people run and they run on the upper level because they can't run on the lower level as they come from, from Hudson River Park all the way down. So it's, I think I don't want to let this moment not try, Alice. So that's my up on that aspect.
I think it's really critical. It's just that we haven't heard anything about it, or at least I don't think we have. And so who would you think is the best to engage with? Is this the Battery Park City Authority on that particular proposal? Is that who the community would?
Yeah, they have a 99-year lease with the city of New York for the building. Right. And I think that I think they are in charge, but I think they now know that because some of the people there now weren't here when we looked at doing screening there. I guess, I can't remember how long ago. It was before Sandy, I think. So I think if we can come up with a creative way of utilizing the space for the community, as well as for that there would be some money coming to the authority. They're not going to go in there free, but and it doesn't mean that what's important to that tip. Food, beverages.
I think it definitely merits a definite follow-up. So perhaps you can join forces at some point, Paul. We can engage on that, and also other ideas that you've talked about for the Battery in terms of Castle Garden and things. If we could have another session with you, that would be fantastic. And I thank you.
Because this, the Playscape will open in June. And today I just got a grant for science and arts curriculum. So we're now already going to write the curriculum for the sense of programming this playground for science and the performing arts, because of the Showbox Theater and because of just the science of these different ecology zones that are in the park. So it's going to be a terrific, and it's the last one. It's, we do have to renovate the park office at some point, but the landscape master plan is complete now. So programming the park, understanding how do we keep this thriving, and then with the Park Service, it would help us a lot to get that tent off thing so we could really celebrate our history of the castle and what is the future. Our board is very instrumental. Our new chairman, Frank Bizignano, is incredibly believes in the history of the site and thinking of the castle, bringing a national board, because it is like Ellis. It was before Ellis, and there are more people that can trace their ancestors back to Castle Garden than to Ellis, because it was predated them. So he's very enthused about building a national board for the castle and working with, we already have a partnership with the National Park Service. So it's a special time of transition as we go from design build into programming and maintenance and sustainability. So for me, it's kind of exciting because I've always only designed knowing how we were going to use the space, what would be the program. So I would love to have a think tank group of the community board, whether it's your committee, Paul, or that it hits a couple of different committees, to say what is and how can we ourselves with the community come up and say, let's really determine what the priority should be in the next phase here. But I do think coming up with an alternative for the use of Pier A is number one on my list, Alice.
I had a feeling. I had heard about it. It's tremendous. I'm glad you had. So I will follow up on that for sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you, Alice, for raising that, because yes, that's an important issue and we'll continue to discuss it one way or the other here at the community party. Okay. And I also agree with you, Alice, that we should pick up the issue of the dog-free zone. I should point out that we got a message from Jeff Oakes, and he said he's the new secretary of the Downtown Dog NYC group, and he just wanted to let us know he completely supports the dog-free zone area, and said his group is trying to convince other dog owners to be respectful and mindful of the space and etc. So does anyone have any further comments, or are we ready to do a resolution supporting that concept? Okay, all right, then I'll make a motion to just a couple of questions to make sure I understand. This is a total closure of that area. It's not subject to seasons or anything like that, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anyone want to second that resolution?
Seconded.
Okay. Diana, you want to, if there's no discussion, I'll put it up for a vote.
It seems like there's a pretty wide consensus here. So I'm going to call for any recused, abstaining, or opposed. Are there any recused? Any abstaining? Any opposed?
Okay, great. Okay, well, Wari, thanks so much. You're always a wealth of information, and I deeply appreciate all the work you do at the Battery and for this community as a whole. So thank you, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again in the months ahead.
Absolutely. We'll keep giving you, I think it's important for the community to be excited by the playground because it's such a morale booster. And so as we get more things, just to shoot a little email like, oh, here's something else about playground progress. And I can send those to Diane. And when you do an e-blast, I don't want to overwhelm. And I know you have so many other issues you want to do, but it's an upbeat moment. This is our new playground. Can you believe it? Look at this. It's going in and it's opening in June. And, you know, to get through the spring, it's like around the corner here. And you saw many of the elements are already on site. So I think it would be fun to start giving you updates. And then you decide how you want to put them out to the public.
Well, June is perfect timing considering where a lot of people are optimistic that by around then we'll be able to resume some sense of normalcy. We'll see about that. But again, thanks.
You're welcome, Paul. Thank you all for your support tonight. It really means a lot to me.
Okay. Okay, let's then move to item number 2. Item 2 is a proposal for a nearly 2-acre park in the Holland Tunnel Rotary. And we have with us Dasha Kapalova and Peter Ballman, who've come up with this idea, and they have a presentation for us. So give us further introductions on who you are, where you come from, and we'll go on from there.
Sure. So we're going to go ahead and share, share our screen.
I think we're sharing. Can you guys see our screen?
Is that good?
Perfect.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. So I'm Dasha Kapalova, and this is Peter Ballman, and we have a practice, Ballman Kapalova, which is based in upstate New York in Ithaca, where we both also teach at Cornell University. So the two of us met at Cooper Union, where we were students, and we have lived in New York City on and off since 2002. And part of our practice is focused on finding opportunities for urban public space in cities, specifically in areas that are forgotten or neglected. So our proposal for St. John's Park was initially we did it as a concept proposal, as a kind of theoretical project. But as we showed it to more people and kind of more people found out about it, the project has gained some momentum, which is why we are here today. And we're very, very thankful to the community board for letting us present this project to you today. So for the last 2 years, we've been working with a team of collaborators, which, the different companies and organizations are up on the screen right there. And everyone's been working pro bono. It's just been kind of a labor of love for everybody. And everyone's just working on it because we all just feel really strongly about the potential of this project.
Yeah. So before we get started, one quick disclaimer. So this is a completely self-initiated project. We weren't invited to do this by anyone, and we're well aware that this proposal is on Port Authority property. We have not received any formal comment or any formal direction from Port Authority, but we're continuing to pursuing this project just in the hopes that eventually an opportunity will arise where all parties, that being Port Authority, the community, and the city, at large, might find a mutual benefit in carrying out the project.
Yeah. So similarly, nobody from the community reached out to us to make this proposal, basically. So our hope now is to introduce this project to you formally and to initiate discussion and collaboration in a few specific ways. So first and foremost, the main question is this something the community wants? And if so, then second, we see our role as architects as kind of making the space, as proposing and finding the space for this park. And how that space is used is not something that we want to define on our own. So instead, we want this to really be a very open-ended dialogue with the community and with the city. And then third, we are very interested in adding people to our team who have expertise complementary to our own. So we'd like to collaborate with others who have expertise working with city agencies, building and operating nonprofits, and developing funding and operational feasibility models for the park and the surrounding areas. So maybe that's something we can talk about as well.
Sure. So without further ado, so this is the location, the terminus of the Holland Tunnel, entrance to Manhattan in New York City. In the early 19th century, the space was a park. It was a gated park surrounded by residences and presided over by St. John's Chapel. Eventually, it was sold to Cornelius Vanderbilt and became a massive building, a 3-story freight depot to house cars of the West Side Rail Line. Since 1927, it has served as the terminus of the tunnel. The center has occasionally been utilized for storage and also as a place to install large works of art, for instance, Richard Serra's Ark. But the majority of time, the center of the space has been completely inaccessible and unused. As a piece of infrastructure, it's remarkable because it distributes a very high volume of traffic into several directions with a very small footprint. But from the point of view of the pedestrian, it's a huge amount of unusable empty space, which confoundingly is also an obstacle that you have to navigate around. Here's the rotary from above. So there's the surrounding streets, Late, Erickson, Eric Hudson. There's the rotary itself, and then there's the awkward space in between them, and then there's the center space. So our attempt is to make use of all this space here. The amount of space itself is comparable to some of the great European piazzas, which actually is sort of one of the first things we recognized, each of us, when we entered the space, and kind of saw that opportunity. This is how it compares to some of the great, downtown Manhattan parks, Washington Square Park, Union Square, and Madison Square. All of these parks all operate on multiple levels. They're both neighborhood parks for the people that live directly around them. They're connective parks that connect different neighborhoods, and then they also serve as destinations. These are some of the more recent parks introduced into the city, piers, right? So long, linear, and then, of course, the High Line, but relatively narrow and linear. So compared to these, St. John's Park could propose an interesting opportunity because it's centralized And because it is embedded in the fabric, it has the potential to be a connected space. So based on the size and the location of the site, there's a lot of potential here to connect between Hudson Square, Soho, Tribeca, and all the goings on of Canal Street. Everything sort of at this point operates as separate entities. The separation is really enforced by the Rotary, which currently acts as a kind of barrier that you kind of have to walk around. Our goal is, again, to make it passable, permeable space, one that can link all of these neighborhoods. Similar to the hub in the center of Washington Square Park, where you're able to move from, you get foot traffic from Fifth Avenue into Soho, from the East Village to the West Village, all coming together in this one moment, which is kind of an overall a kinetic and very lively place to be, because it has, you have performances, you have people circulating, you have people watching, etc. So just as a comparison, you can see that the size of that space fits comfortably into the center of the Rotary. So with all of this in mind, this is the idea that we propose. We propose a new St. John's Park, which keeps the existing roadway, as it is, more or less, and then excavates below it in order to create that connective space that allows you to move from one street across the park to the next street. Here it is planted, showing kind of its full potential, if we were to fill it with trees. This is a section showing the way that everything works. The traffic stays at the current street level that it's at now. However, the roadway will be rebuilt out of a structure with upturned walls that kind of frames the entrance into the city from the cars, but also protects kind of keeps pedestrians and cars separate from one another. You can see the stair, which leads you from the sidewalk and allows you to walk down across the park and up onto the street on the other side of the site. So in trying to activate, to get to the center of the site, we tried a few different things. We tried bridging over the roadway, we tried building up, and we explored excavating. We found that excavating had the most potential, because it allows you to take full advantage of all of the space, the entire space of the site, whether you are a pedestrian, whether you're in the park, or whether you're a vehicle entering New York City. So by excavating below, the park maintains direct exposure to the sun and the ability to plant trees, but it also gains the ability to protect the park from winter winds. The visual and audible connection between the cars and pedestrians is interrupted by the new roadway, providing a quiet environment within the center of the city. The park also is unique in the sense that without walls or fences, it can create a safe and traffic-free environment for children. So, in fact, the project proposes 4.6 acres of usable open exterior space. So some of that is hardscape, some of it is planted, some of it is underneath the roadway, some of it is staircases, but it is all inhabitable open air exterior space. And it also introduced 70,000 square feet of interior program space. So here's one view of how the Central Park might look. You can see that there's hardscape, there's permeable ground. There are planters that are paired with water elements, which kind of surrounded by benches that allow everybody to get right up against not unlike what the park that we were just seeing in the Battery, which is beautiful. So here again is the sort of close up of how you get down into the park, and you can kind of see all of its components. There's the large connective stair, which is both a place to walk, and of course it can also be planted, but it can also be a place to gather. The concept there was kind of the Spanish Steps, which is both a connector and a destination. In terms of the number of steps, you're covering about the same amount of ground as you are when you walk the steps up to the High Line, so nothing unfamiliar. Down at the base, you find yourself in a colonnade, which is just like an open air circulation space where you can have refuge from the weather. You can also circulate around, or you can cross straight through the park. We saw it sort of as an open air breezeway like this. And as for the park itself, is reminiscent of Rockefeller Center, where it's kind of an activity hub that is a draw for the entire city, but you also have activities at street level and below street level, as well as shops and activities around the perimeter. Also similar to the Oculus, where descending down from the street level kind of has this unexpected spatial payoff that is then linked to activities happening around the perimeter. And this is one of the very early images that we made of the site that show how the unique way that the new walls of the Rotary can frame, kind of give you a special view of the city.
So we'd like to talk you through the parts that make up the proposal. So the geometry of the proposal is a loop, and that loop comes directly from the existing Rotary. So the idea here again is that we don't interfere with the existing traffic patterns at all. We made this loop into a wall that travels from street level to the lower level, framing interior and exterior spaces at and below street level and defining the roadways. Again, the roadway stays in the exact place where it is, no change to traffic or elevation. So at street level, the loop defines 8 to 10 smaller, intimate parks. And these parks act as extensions of the sidewalk. In between these smaller parks are larger sloped areas, which are a mixture of green space and permeable hardscape, and they contain stairs, ramps, and elevators that lead from the sidewalk down to the central park. Around the park, in the corners below the ramps, where the spaces are closed off and darker, we created interior spaces with skylights from above. In the upper left here is also the possibility of leaving one of these spaces open to the sky. So here's a view of the site as it is now. North is at the bottom of the frame, so that's where the tunnel comes in. And here's the view with the proposed new St. John's Park. You can see the skylights kind of permeating to the lower interior spaces, and they become benches in the small sidewalk parks. So the upturned walls of the new Rotary can frame a new entrance experience to the city, and the walls can serve as signage or as a space for public art, welcoming people into the city. From the sidewalk, the entire project takes on the appearance of a large public sculpture. And where the curved loop walls encounter the pedestrian directly, we've sculpted them, sloping them down to the scale of the person and down to frame the entrances of the small sidewalk parks. And here are some views of these parks. So you can see the entrance here on the left directly from the sidewalk. This is one idea for, we think that these parks would be programmed kind of uniquely in different ways for each one. But this is an idea for kind of a hardscape piazza park. This would be kind of a wild, natively planted garden. Dog parks could happen there, and of course, playground. So as a slight kind of sidebar to the project, we've been collaborating with the Tribeca Community School. So there's 3 preschools just on Erickson Place alone, like right across from the site. And Tribeca Community School got in touch with us. They found out about the project and they got in touch with us because they use one of those kind of small awkward spaces in between the Rotary and the street on the corner of Erickson and Varick for their outdoor space. So you can see this here. And they've really been trying to make it, as nice as they possibly can for the kids with kind of the limited amount that they can actually, affect the site. And they have, for the last year, they've been doing this project where the kids have been involved in designing like a dream playground of what they imagine, what they're calling this triangle park could be. So when they read about the project, they thought, oh my God, this is so close to what we're doing. And so we started talking to them because we think that it would also be amazing that if this project were to be built, for the play equipment to be designed in collaboration with the kids that would be using the play equipment. So right now we're just collaborating with this one school, but we hope to expand the collaboration to many more schools in the area. And this is just a picture of the kids up on the pedestrian bridge looking down at the center of the site, kind of dreaming about the big possible playground that could be there one day.
Okay, so we're going to run you quickly through a couple of technical aspects of the project. Very preliminary, but just want to kind of let you know, one of the couple of things we've been working on and that we see as kind of potential avenues for the project. One is logistics. In proposing this project, we wanted to demonstrate that it could be built. The primary concern is never stopping traffic out of the tunnel. So one of before we went public with this project, we knew that we had to figure out, at least conceptually, how to build it without stopping traffic coming out of the tunnel. So we've been working with structural engineers, Thornton Tomasetti, as well as precast concrete companies, BPDL and Fort Miller, to validate the structure and to figure out like how we're going to put these pieces together. What we figured out is that this is all the pieces of the new roadway. And we figured out that we can start by working on the outside perimeter, where we'll be working from the sidewalk, and then we can move our activities to the the circle, where we will just be working from the circle, and that basically allows the traffic to flip from the inside of the loop to the outside of the loop. So this is just some detail of that. Won't go into too much detail unless someone is specifically interested. But we subdivided the site into 10 segments. So that basically allows us to complete each segment before we move on to the next segment. So we only have to shut down the ramp at a time. And this is just, unfortunately I have a lag here, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, just want to showing how that works.
I don't know where it is right now. You have to print it out again. But...
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
So here is the completed park at street level, and this is the park below street level. So it became very early on that there's a potential for this project to integrate a sustainability and water dimension that can add to the project's value while at the same time possibly helping with water management in the neighborhood. So this is a study that we did with Langen very early on, just to kind of make sure that there were not going to be any surprises when we started digging down, and pretty much there's nothing here that we can't handle. But we did discover the groundwater is at around 15 feet. So that's one piece of information. In parallel to that, we wanted to understand what the native landscape of this area looked like, and also what the worst case scenario of this area looks like. So on the right, you're seeing in blue, you're seeing the water, the flood, the Sandy, what happened with Sandy. And then in turquoise, you're seeing the 100-year flood. So what's interesting is that the site actually is on a kind of peninsula, right here in the middle of this flooding. And the question is, as we excavate, is there a potential to somehow serve the surrounding community as a way to help manage that water? There are 3 different types of water: storm surge, and like parallel water coming in from the street, downpour. So of course, downpour, can flood the storm system, which can be a big problem, and then groundwater. So as we designed this in section, we're kind of trying to figure out how to juggle all of these together and to create a feature of the park that could possibly be interactive. There could be a discovery component, an educational component to the way that this whole park processes water, and essentially we're sort of envisioning it as a piece of maybe water infrastructure that can help serve the neighborhood. And this is just an example of how that kind of might, underneath the surface of the park, there might be sort of this water management system going on. And this is the extent of the park that would be available to this kind of water management system if we could develop it. It's about 4 acres, so pretty large, a lot of.
Yeah. Okay, so for the last part, we wanted to talk about programming. So again, we have about 4.5 acres of usable open outdoor space, as well as 70,000 square feet of interior space possible. And the question is, what should we do with it? So each of the components, each of the parts of the park, so the walls, the sidewalk parks, the kind of sloped parks, the central park, the interior spaces, they can be programmed to operate independently, so programmed each in their own way, or they can operate as a whole, as a kind of creating a singular park experience. And then in terms of programming, we can create daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal, and then like annual experiences for all or some of these components. So for us, we thought it would also be very important, like all kind of the other major parks in the city, that the park operate really at multiple scales. So the first scale would be at the scale of the immediate neighborhood. The second scale would be at the scale of lower Manhattan. And then finally at the scale of the whole city and, potential draw for the region. So over the course of the 2 years that we've been working on this project, we have run through many programming possibilities. And, maybe some of these are possible, maybe all of these are possible. So we've looked at film screenings and festivals. We've looked at art museums, so a potential satellite of an existing museum in the city. Art museums and galleries as new independent entities, a memorial space, children's museum, concert venues, an ecological educational park, a sculpture garden, ice skating rink, wellness center / yoga or fitness centers, sauna or bathhouse, restaurants and cafes, playgrounds, playfields, auditoriums as a kind of educational forum, retail, farmers markets, and the potential to hold larger scale fairs. So again, thinking through these, we just created some visuals to, help the process along. So this is a series of images dealing with the central park space. So this is showing it as a kind of hardscape piazza, as a planted park, as a venue for farmers markets, as a children's park with a lot of playgrounds and playscapes, as a venue for fairs or large-scale public sculpture, a venue for outdoor screenings or performances. And plugging into that, there's also an idea that that interior ring that forms the roadway, the concrete could have these LED lights embedded within it that at night could become this, lit up screen to create these 360-degree immersive experiences that could have live video feed or projection and video, but to try to do it in such a way that during the day it wouldn't look like just blank LED screens, but it would look like the material of the wall. So another idea is to do a similar to Rockefeller Center, an ice skating rink, a downtown ice skating rink. And this is a section through the project showing this ice skating rink idea and a close-up that's meant to show that if there's something kind of large scale, whether annual or seasonal or monthly or all the time happening in the center, that you still have space to circulate around and go where you need to go. This is a section showing playfields in the center, and on the sides of the central space you can see that we're cutting a section through proposed interior spaces, which in this case actually here, so this is a view kind of maybe next to the playfields. There could be potential for other playgrounds or smaller scale activities. So in the interior spaces, this is showing a bathhouse or sauna and an interior perspective of what something like that might be like, with the skylight is coming from a street level park above. And potentially also something like a fitness or yoga center. This section is showing an idea of having a planted park in the center with a playground and again, interior spaces on either side. Here we have an auditorium with a speaker, and you can imagine that when you attend a lecture that the skylight might be lighting the speaker to create a pretty incredible experience. This is a close-up of the section where we're imagining that a space, an interior space might be used as a restaurant or as a cafe. So you would get interior seating inside, then you could use the arcade to do kind of, indoor-outdoor seating, so outdoor seating that's covered. And then the seating could spill out into the central space where you then are adjacent to something like a playground. So we've seen seating like this in many cities in the world have these kind of indoor outdoor conditions. This is a reference of San Marco Piazza in Venice, where seating from a restaurant is spilling out into the center, into the outside. And this might look like in St. John's Park, where we've got the restaurant here, this outdoor seating spilling out, parents having lunch or coffee while sitting next to, being able to watch their children play, which we think would be a pretty incredible experience in New York. So that's the project. And we just wanted to add a couple things. So we, of course, understand that given kind of what's going on in the world these days, any new project is going to be very challenging to organize and to fund. So we definitely see this as a long-term project, but we also feel that if we want to see this happen in, a time scale like the next 10 or 15 years, then we really do need to start laying the groundwork relatively soon. So now we are, happy to open it up to questions, of which we're sure there are many.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very impressive, innovative, and well thought out proposal that you're presenting us. It's certainly very interesting. And yeah, I'm sure we will have questions. Could I just ask a quick one first? So you have made the Port Authority aware of this concept, and did you get any, you indicated you didn't get much feedback from them, is that it?
Let's just say we circulated it informally, and there's been some discussion. We've had a couple of conversations, and our understanding is that it's being circulated, but we haven't received anything formal, and we're hoping that we can, but
well, they're going through a rough stretch too. So
sure, absolutely.
Okay. So let me open it up for questions, comments, and I'll start with Elizabeth Lewinson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I lived right across the street at 145 Hudson for about 10 years, as recently as about a year ago. So I'm very familiar with the area. I do have a whole bunch of questions for you. Let's just start with the easy one. So in terms of funding, are you looking for city funding, state funding, private funding? What is sort of your vision? This is it. I mean, it's a wonderful idea, and I've long thought that there's much wasted space there. Just living across the street there, I thought, wow, it would be amazing if we could do something with that space. It would be great for some sort of recreation. It is incredibly wasted, and in a city like this, we should be able to do something. But this is a very ambitious plan, and I just, it requires a lot of funding, and I just want to know. I mean, I know you're just starting out right now, but I'm curious to know who you're looking at to fund this. Right.
I don't think we have any specific answers to that, but we do have kind of some ideas. I mean, I think it's kind of all of the above. I mean, we see this as being definitely something that is both private and publicly funded to a certain extent. Possibly the infrastructure component is a funding source. The sustainability component is a potential funding source. But there's also the way we're understanding all of the parts, the different parts. So the sidewalk parks, the center park, the strip around the perimeter. All of these are potential donor opportunities and different programming opportunities. So there could be some financial relief there. So we're still, again, this is one of the areas that we're trying to figure out at this time, and we're looking for kind of, I guess you could say, partnership on that, trying to figure out. I'd say probably we have a handful of next steps, and one of them is putting together a financial study.
Okay, great. And then another question I had, and I guess this is going to be a whole bunch of questions in one. How are you looking to change the roadway exactly? Or did you say that you're not looking to raise the road, you're just looking to put the walls there?
Correct.
So
yeah,
that
so
would probably, the roadway, sorry.
Yeah, no. So the roadway basically stays at grade, exactly like how it is now. What we're doing is we're excavating under to create the park and to create the connections. And then we're kind of folding the sides of the roadway up so that we protect pedestrians in the park from, the sound and noise,
right.
all that kind of unwanted stuff.
Right. The road would be rebuilt. It is going to be rebuilt, but in the exact same kind of condition and pattern that it is in now. Yeah, and at the same elevation.
So DOT would need to be involved too, in addition to Port Authority. Have you spoken to some of the neighbors? Because you might get some pushback. I mean, first of all, the police precinct is a neighbor as well. You may want to talk to them and see what their review
Yeah.
there on that is, because especially if you're going to create an access point right by the police precinct, you know, that's something that they should be involved in. But my concern with those raised walls is that it actually, you might get pushback on that. People might actually think it looks like large concrete barriers that are unattractive. At the moment, from grade level, you can actually see the green park through these gates. So if you're standing on the street, you view that, and it actually is quite pretty. But the way you envision this plan, if you're walking, I mean, perhaps you can see the trees, right? When the weather is nice, you know, during the summer and potentially the spring. But I think that since you're sinking the park, I think from street level, I think you're not going to have that same sort of view of greenery like you would the way it currently exists. And that might be something that the neighbors might push back on.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think that from street, you would have a view down into the park. So you wouldn't see the tree canopies, but you would see the park. But it definitely is. I mean, it's definitely a kind of a trade-off between, you know, seeing all the way through to, you know, it being clear versus like how much protection do you want from the car. So we think that those walls could definitely be made out of different materials for sure. But it's, again, like basically we feel that all components of this project are open to discussion, and that's a really good point.
Yeah, but we're also planning to plant trees not only in the center but also around the perimeter and all those small perimeter parks, and like in the rendering that we're looking at right here in the large sort of sloped you know, communicating stair area that goes from the sidewalk down into the park. Those are also potentially, you know, places where we can plant trees as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's great. I think that will be beautiful. I mean, I think your plan is incredible. I really do. There are just a couple of concerns here and there, and I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but two other things that I wanted to point out too is the idea of LED lights or on the walls at nighttime. I don't think that's something that's going to go over well. We had some issues. No, we had some issues. We had some issues a couple of years ago with Spring Studios doing light shows, and the neighbors were very upset about that. On three sides of this park, you have residential buildings, right? There's only one side really where Spring Studios is that you don't have. Well, now you do have a residential building right next to it. So you really should talk to the neighbors and the residents about this. I think that you might want to post and, you know, in the buildings and sort of get some sort of meeting started where you talk to them about these ideas, because I think it's more important to talk to them, I think, than anyone else. And I would include the police precinct too. Lastly, one other thing to think about is that pedestrian bridge, you know which one I'm talking about? The one, okay. I don't know how you're going to incorporate that into your plans, but that is something you probably have to take into account too, right? Because that will sort of border the park, or in some way, I don't know if that's going to obstruct anything that you're planning on doing.
Well, our plan, because we're basically creating a way to connect through the park, we were assuming that we would take that bridge down basically because it wouldn't be needed anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's something to talk to the city about, right? I mean, a lot of these things, it's not just Port Authority, discussion, it's DOT and the city, it's conversations with them as well.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, Paul, I think I'm done. You can go to somebody else. Sorry. I don't want to dominate, like I said.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Going down the list, Andrew Zelter.
So, first of all, just a huge thank you. If I understand correctly, what you've put into this thus far has been your own time and effort. And what you've come forward with is an incredible vision. So kudos for your time and energy and addressing what is an absolutely critical need in Lower Manhattan, which is just park space, passive, active, recreational, however you define it. There's just a dire need for this. So thank you. And I also applaud the grandeur of your vision. I like when we come at things from, thinking big and putting forward aggressive or ambitious plans. Having said that, have you considered a design or a utilization that occurs at ground level as the layout currently exists?
Yeah. Well, we have we haven't done that as in depth as we have taken this study, but it was one of the preliminary studies, which is deciding, do we go up and over what's there now? Do we build everything up, or do we just excavate below? And what we found is that you don't get the benefit of the full kind of you don't really get the full benefit of the connectivity that kind of goes that you get when you pass underneath the roadway. And also, when you just go up and over the existing road, you essentially finding yourself in a circle surrounded by the traffic, so that we just kind of consider that to be like not so pleasant. It doesn't mean that there's not a possibility there, but it's just not, it's not the direction that we wanted to push it.
Yeah, I mean, and also as a connectivity, like we felt that people wouldn't really circulate through the center, because you have to go up and down and up and down, and you have to go up pretty high just to clear all the traffic. But so we kind of, I mean, it would definitely be a cheaper idea to just build 2 bridges to connect from a couple sides. That's definitely a possibility. But again, we felt like you would end up in a place that was just kind of surrounded by traffic and completely disconnected from everything else. And we didn't really know who would want to be there so much. So we felt like at the end of the day, I just end up being kind of a dead space anyway. And then in terms of building up, I mean, I guess you didn't ask this question, but we always get asked this question, so I'm just going to get it out of the way. People ask, why do you go down as opposed to building up and just kind of creating like a tabula rasa on top of the thing? And our answer is really that for us, it completely destroys the sense of this open space at street level, because essentially you would end up with a pretty tall 1-story, it would be like 25 feet probably waterfront box around this whole site. So from the street, it would just completely destroy the sense of the space as a piazza. And you'd kind of have to go up, and it just, in terms of the actual circulation for cars, it would be pretty awful. Port Authority would probably definitely not be on board of that, or maybe not, but so out of all the possibilities, we just felt like this took advantage of, this worked with the infrastructure and kind of respected the infrastructure, and also created something really unique, which is, definitely a kind of a grander vision than simply bridging over, but in the long run, we felt would be a space that would endure in the city, and that would become a real center.
Right. And I get all of that. So thank you for that response. Paul, I guess just to comment to yourself and our committee, rather than send this group off on its own to have conversations and solicit input and feedback from other stakeholders, I'd love for us to consider what role we can play in helping to facilitate and coordinate, whether it's this design or another design. I just think they've come forward with a great vision, and I'd love to be able to help them out to advance it.
Yes, I agree. We have to have that discussion after the question and answer, how we're going to proceed as this community board. Thank you. Good suggestion. Let's keep going. Wendy?
Thank you. The grand design is overwhelming, especially since it includes possible ice skating and swimming or spa just over the top, which is fantastic. But to be practical, one of the things that when you started this whole presentation, I immediately started thinking about the cisterns and the water capture that we're learning about through the resiliency measures we're learning about that they use in, Dutch design right now. And so even when you first started this, and this is exactly the area that is going to be very problematic. We know this already. And the Army Corps of Engineers, they know this already. So I would love to push this design forward with the city, which right now the city has no money, no plans, no anything for Northern Tribeca. Certainly the MTA has protected the Holland Tunnel, and the Port Authority has done that or not, the MTA has done their subways and the Port Authority has done the tunnels, but there is no money and no plan for Northern Tribeca. So I would say lead when you're talking about this design. Everything that the city is doing right now, we know we're broke, but we also know that we're going to flood, and that's the urgent need. So I think you can have all these extra benefits that you showed us, but lead with the resiliency. And I would also say that not only would be a water capture, but a cistern that then becomes a place that you capture water and then water the park when we have these hot, dry conditions as well. These are things that we're learning about that other cities are doing, if that makes sense or doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, we have a couple of different people that we've been working with to sort of brainstorm on these ideas. We're sort of on the fence whether how big we want to go with the ideas, because we don't want to propose something that's unrealistic. But what you just proposed right there is actually very doable and very achievable, and works very and really just at least helps the operations of the park kind of pay for itself, right? Yeah,
there's a I don't remember if it was in Thailand or in Singapore, but the park that's on the it's an inland park that it's on an angle, and and the water goes down, captures in a cistern, and then they use that to water it during the dry season. Right. To me, that also helps make this. That's the biggest problem with our parks right now, is that they have a very hard time surviving our extreme temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But this is fantastic. And if you can have a swimming spa, I'm in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. David Sheldon. You need to unmute.
Beautiful use of otherwise wasted urban space. Thank you. But I'm very interested in the possible resiliency function. Did Langen Engineering have anything to say to that?
So, not yet. I've been speaking with a couple of different people, but we've not. One of the next steps is, the way we work with resiliency and the way that we do the structure, the two are sort of related to one another, right? Because in order to design the structure, you have to understand hydrostatic pressure, which allows you to kind of dig into the available water and all of that. So the two are very much related. And we've been very hesitant to push any of our, let's say, partners to that level of design without getting a substantial amount of support, not even just financial, but just kind of moral support, right? Now that I have this feedback from you guys, I think we can go and really push it, because the question is really,
it's basically like a brand new typology for the city, and every engineer that we talk to, their brains just kind of explode with the potential for this thing. And it would definitely have to be designed. It's not necessarily a system that already exists or is in use in the city.
Yeah, like everything with resiliency or sustainability, it's really all about a balance. It's not so much about the gimmick. It's about really doing the work to figure out what the perfect balance is, and how much of the. So there's a lot of design, even at the conceptual level, to kind of figure it out. But we certainly have begun that, and that's definitely the next step.
The general consensus is that there's just a lot of exciting potential, and something can be figured out. But it's going to take work to figure that out, and we've had a lot of big concept conversations. Even down to the fact that. The fact that we're below groundwater, and that groundwater, retains heat. So in the winter, it's warmer than the air, and in the summer, it's cooler, that there's a passive heating cooling opportunity. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff here that could really be dug into.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, David. Mark Amoroso.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. Well, the number one stakeholders are the people that live around there. Thousands of people that live around there. Have they been consulted yet?
They have, so there's an article, we haven't like gone out door to door and like done community outreach because we felt that we should kind of speak to the community board and get some more also feedback from the Port Authority. But there is an article that came out in the Tribeca Trib over the summer, which is how like for example, the preschool from across the street got involved. And I think all of the parents whose kids go to that preschool are very excited about the project, as far as we've been told. And then there's actually an article that just came out in the Tribeca Citizen about the project just, I think, today, which hopefully will also get some feedback. But we definitely, I think one of the things we want to maybe also discuss with somebody who knows basically is exactly how to like get in touch with the people who actually live in these buildings.
When are you going to start that door-to-door canvas?
I mean, we could start it kind of any time after, as long as we get some kind of like nod of approval from at least you guys that this is something that it could be a positive thing.
Yeah.
So,
what did the Port Authority say?
They haven't said anything official yet, and they know about the project. It's being circulated, but we kind of made like a push with them before your guys' meeting in November, and and they've been kind of circulating it internally.
Yeah.
So we've yet to hear back anything official from them, but they are. As far as we know, they're talking about it internally right now.
Yeah.
The examples that you used, I didn't notice, but were any of them exits to arterial roadways or tunnels or any parks that you will use examples of that fit the criteria of this particular situation, the disaster known as the Holland Tunnel?
No, so I mean, there's really no precedent for this kind of park, at least that we've been able to find in all our searching. There's a related precedent by an architect called Rafael Moneo, who's a very well-known Spanish architect who, was like a chair at at Harvard and all this stuff. And it's also kind of a sunken park surrounded by a roadway, but it's about the same size, but it's not kind of like surrounded by buildings. And it's in Pamplona in Spain, and that park is pretty successful and is used kind of widely for like large events and kind of gathering, and also works as a connective space. But it's different in the sense that it's kind of on the outskirt of town, whereas this is like right kind of in the center of a major urban metropolitan area.
And that's the major problem right there. You just said it.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
That's the obstacle. It's the location, not the design. And the other factor is this is a major construction undertaking, and then the maintenance and the long-term maintenance with elevated roadways as exit to the tunnel, that has got to be a major consideration because any type of repair and as we know in New York, when things are built, they're never built to last 50 years. They're built to last as long as they can so they can fix them again later on and make more money. Not like they do in Europe when they pave a road and in 50 years you don't have to worry about it. So that consideration of maintenance, short and long term, must be considered.
Absolutely. We actually, we didn't, in working with BPDL and in Fort Miller detailing these precast pieces, we actually have had these conversations and also with Thornton Tomasetti about the way that these joints are detailed and the way that they're maintained, so that, and actually the fact that we're able to get to the joints from below is a benefit. I won't really go into it, but we've certainly started having those conversations with our group.
How long would it take to build?
I mean, the target is 2 years. I think the roadway itself would take about 80 weeks, and because about 8 weeks per ramp, but the target is about 2 years, but again, we're doing it ramp by ramp, so we're moving around the perimeter one piece at a time. So in designing the logistics, we've actually, as a starting point, are trying to minimize disruption as much as possible.
And how do the vehicles exit the tunnel during this 2 years?
Only one ramp is ever closed at a time. So I think the last time I went through there, which was about 2 weeks ago, one of the ramps is closed. Now, obviously, traffic's a lot lower right now than it is usually, but I know that occasionally they do close the ramps to the rotary. I've not gotten into the metrics of how that affects traffic flow, but the goal was we only shut down one of these ramps at a time.
That could be just knowing and living here all these years. Paul will know, and a few others, how disruptive just that can be. So, Paul, I heard a few of the members talking about reaching out to support this project specifically. I hope we're not going to do that. I mean, we can support like a concept that's saying it would be great if the space can be used in some sort of way, but not specific to this yet. I don't think we're ready for that, honestly, and I hope we board members individually want to do it, but as collective, as a community board and as a committee, I don't think we're ready to green light this specifically. Just it would be great if something can be done there, but we don't have any idea on a concept yet.
No, you raised some good points, but let's hear what everyone else wants to do as we finish going through the committee. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Joe Lerner.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Of course, it's a beautiful design, but that's not the issue for me. How many benches are there so people could go there and not have to pay to do something?
Well, we're seeing that the whole center would be, ideally filled with benches as well as the street level parks. So again, we're very open to what the kind of the programming and the design of that central space is. So the last thing that we want is for this to become a place where like you have to go and like buy coffee just to sit down. Yeah. So we don't see it as a kind of a private enterprise. We definitely see it as a public space in the city open to all. There's a lot of
So the spa, if you'll excuse me, or the convention, or the speakers, or stuff like that, that will be all underground?
Yep. So those are the spaces that are kind of directly under the off ramps and those dark spaces, and those would be interior spaces, kind of around the park.
Yeah. And again, for us, first and foremost, it's a very interesting point that you're bringing up, because the question of programming has always been a big question for us, and we've been very open about that. We showed a lot of ideas, from the LED screen to the spa and everything, but these are really just us throwing out ideas of just things that have come up over the 2 years that we've been working on this. And we really want to leave it up to the community and to as many stakeholders as we can kind of pull into this to help us define what a real use could be, what a real need could be. The idea of programming is a way to keep the site active, yeah, and to keep new people kind of coming through it. But first and foremost to us, this is a park for people to pass through and to sit, to relax, and to be a park. It's not a commercial undertaking.
But also, I mean, the interior spaces are also opportunities for revenue. Yeah. So those are basically it's like 70,000 square feet of leasable space that could be leased to somebody who's actually paying rent, essentially. But the park stays open.
They're paying to operate the park.
Or paying to operate the park. So that's where we see the kind of that's how it's unlike a regular park, where it has this built-in kind of interior, money making, or at least park funding opportunity, which a regular just, like grassy park on street level doesn't.
So how many benches have you planned so far?
Well, one of the schemes we had like 80 in the center or like 90 or something like that. But again, it's like the scheme right now, as we're showing it in the renderings, there's just these planters that have these continuous benches
How many
all
linear
around.
feet is that right there, do you think?
I'm sorry?
60 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to do some quick math. Everywhere you see a wall here, everywhere you see a wall in the sidewalk, the sidewalk small parks, that is a bench. There are benches that are integral to the precast upturned walls.
You mean
So everywhere.
you
Good.
mean those that are facing the traffic or
No,
benches
no.
inside.
Yeah.
So
inside?
protected from traffic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in the center, if there's things like planters, they would be also aligned with benches.
Right. When you're looking over here, like these walls over there of this corner planter, that would all be benches. And around that skylight is all benches.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we see benches as being, just like the, Washington Square Park in the center, like that space is successful because you can go and sit down and watch people. And that to us is a really important part of this piece. Yeah.
The only entertainment they have there is above ground. But thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, I believe we have two more speakers, and then we'll talk about it internally for a few minutes and figure out how to proceed.
I mean, no one brings reality.
All right, well, we'll get there. Alice Blank.
Hi, I just, thanks very much. That's a fabulous presentation. And as an architect, I can say I really appreciate seeing this kind of work. And thank you. It's really so rare that the community gets to review, an inventive, interesting project that certainly is got a lot of really interesting components. Just curious, do you know why, I actually don't know this, why we can't use the center area? Like, why can't people access that? What is the reason?
It's the traffic. It's the continual traffic flow. So Port Authority, basically you would need a crosswalk to get there, which means—
So there's nothing about there's no prevention because of security issues. It's just simply a matter of—
I mean, I think it's a security issue too. And I mean, part of what this project does is it actually further separates the roadway from people, which is kind of security wise an added benefit. But I think it's both a security thing and it's a you just have to stop traffic to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just curious about that. So was this like a studio project for Cordell, or was this was something just that you just started to develop yourselves?
It's just us coming up with it. I mean, it's just a space that, just being in the city, we always, driving through it or walking through it, would always be like, what can we do here? And
what's really unique about this space, and the reason that we say that it is reminiscent of like a European piazza, for instance, is that when you're in it, there's a lot of facades. It's a very big open space that is surrounded by these facades and that are very frontal. And I remember the first time that I walked in there, maybe not the first time, but the first time that I walked there after having been to Europe for the first time, it immediately struck me as there's a real opportunity here. But at that time, I didn't realize what was so chaotic about the area, but I just knew that there was something that, needed to be there. And Dasha had a similar, I think, response, but just to to answer your question, I mean, we have certainly had studios where that dealt with, trying to find areas in cities that needed to be rehabilitated. And Dasha in particular in school did a lot of projects like that.
Well, that's why I asked, because it's got that feel to it. And I just, it lends itself, that site. And so much as your old stomping ground in Cooper Union would have loaned itself often. But I'm just curious, I think it's really critical that these kinds of ideas come to fruition sometimes. And the idea of a park in anywhere in New York City is a great idea. But I think Wendy really tapped into what is really a launching pad for this project, which is really talking about it as a moment to add resiliency into the neighborhood in a real way. And so I would absolutely turn this on its head and reconsider the way you want to advertise it, as it were, and frankly, to really look at it. with engineers and designers of this kind of cistern idea. Because when I saw it, I thought, oh, this is brilliant. They're going to fill this with water. This is what we need. It's, as Wendy also points out, the west side of Manhattan, Tribeca, we have absolutely no resiliency and measures at all planned. And so this would be a sort of really interesting project on that level. So I would really, want to see this pushed less as a piazza and more as a resiliency measure. And frankly, the park is a sort of secondary aspect almost. The other thing is, I think, to make this begin to sing and have people start to really engage is, I think Elizabeth talked about, or somebody about the financial modeling. You have to identify, how this is going to happen, even in the most schematic way. And I think that people have called for some good suggestions that maybe you're not building up and doing quite as much as aggressively as what you're seeing here, but rather looking at, other possible ways to go about this that might be affordable, and speaking to it in real language of financing. So those are just the suggestions going forward, because I very much would encourage that this board supports something going forward. Agree with Mark that we don't know what it is, but that something starts to come from this. So just some thoughts, but I really, really, really applaud the resiliency feature and really think that you could really sell it to the city that way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe the last person who hasn't spoken yet and wants to is Richard Corman.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I feel that you have brought us a gift here, a gift that you've worked on for 2 years, and I don't see how any community could say no to this kind of incredible generosity of creativity and thoughtfulness and effort. It's beautiful. Obviously, there are lots of practicalities that need to be addressed that not many of the folks on the board have raised. And, and I completely concur with what Alice and Wendy said about resiliency is a good sales pitch. But in the end, what we want is a park that could be wonderful. And this looks like it could be, with all of the hurdles yet to occur. And so first, I thank you for the gift. It's like Christmas. And secondly, with that said, I have to ask a simple practical question, which is exhaust fumes from the cars. How have you thought about that in the context of people gathering in the midst of all of it?
Sure.
So exhaust fumes, because they're hotter than the air, they rise rather than fall. So actually the air at street level is dirtier than the air would be at the bottom of this thing. So there's obviously wind circulation through it, but basically car exhaust rises up. So the air, again, in the center of the park, and as you go lower, would actually get kind of cleaner and cleaner. And then again, like these walls, they would also serve some protection of kind of containing the fumes from even, going out into the street. But also all the extra planting that we're proposing would also really, become kind of a new green lung for the area. So the idea and the hope and the kind of the very real possibility is that the air, even at street level, would end up being cleaner for pedestrians than it is now.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were thinking, but I just wanted to kind of confirm that and then just say, go Big Red. Thanks so much for coming down here.
Go Big Red.
Okay, let me see if I could try to sum up.
Paul, it's Elizabeth. Can I just say one more thing? I just had one more thought before you talk about the resolution. Okay, first of all, I think that what Wendy and Alice said about the resiliency point is brilliant. You should definitely sell the city on that for sure. But one other thing that you may consider selling the city on, and this might be absolutely crazy, but Mark sort of reminded me about this, and I just want to piggyback on his point about that area. One huge problem with Hudson Street right there is that maybe it's not this way during COVID, but once COVID is over, you'll notice that the traffic there backs up, especially on Friday afternoons at around 4 o'clock. There's so much honking. There's so much, going into the Holland Tunnel there. The backup of traffic there is outrageous. And it's definitely going to destroy the tranquility of your programming, by the way. I mean, it is, I lived on the 7th floor and I would hear it, up until 7 p.m. at night, sometimes on Friday. Maybe it's crazy, but maybe you want to work with the city to somehow ameliorate that problem. I don't know if it's at all possible, but that could be something that you can propose to the city. Again, it is a much thornier problem than just building a park, but it could be something that you might consider. And again, I just want to applaud you on this. This is an incredible project, and thank you so much for your hard work and your 2 years of hard work as well. It's really amazing. So anyway, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Paul, can I just add one thing? It'll be 30 seconds, and it was what Richard was saying. That's why I brought up the point about any other examples within the traffic circle. Anyone who lives in North Tribeca, Elizabeth will know. The winds wreak havoc here. They are exponentially more fierce, and what goes up comes down, what comes down goes up. So the normal concept of what rises isn't necessarily going to be accurate. So that's why I brought that point up about.
That's a great point. And one of the first things that we did was a wind study with Transolar. Our environmental consultant. So they essentially confirmed that about the wind patterns. But, it's something that we need to work on. And to your point about, let's say reality versus the idealistic environment or the ideal environment that we seem to be creating in our images, we're not trying to make a park that's not a New York. We know New York, and what we're trying to do is make a park that is better than what's there now. This is not an ideal condition. This is not a tabula rasa, right? This is finding an area that needs to be fixed and turned into an asset for the city. So we've tried to cover as much ground, sideways, let's say, as we can. And now we want to kind of find the pieces and kind of start building up and refining the amount of detail and all these points. So anyway, we really appreciate all of your all's comments.
Okay. So,
if I could be helpful with the neighbors, because I did live there for 10 years, just let me know, and I'll help you reach out to them.
Cool.
That would be awesome.
All right. So from my vantage point, I heard primarily enthusiastic support for this conceptually. There were certainly concerns raised about some elements and some impacts upon the neighborhood that should be considered. I guess you're looking for ideas. You certainly got some feedback. Do you guys feel like you received enough feedback to take another stab at this before we do anything more formal? Or I don't know what are you looking for from us?
I mean, I guess the thing is that, again, right now we're kind of at the point where we can't push our concerns to help us resolve all these quote unquote thorny issues that we do feel like can definitely be resolved. Until we can say the community board is in support of this project.
Yeah, but I think that to that point, I think that we're not, but that's not we're not trying to, whenever that support comes naturally, you know what I mean? So if you guys feel that in order for us to give us support, there's more work that needs to be done, we'll most certainly do it.
Yeah.
But what we really what we're really hoping to get out of this is just, in addition to y'all's feedback, which has been fantastic, is to spread the word, and so that, because we feel like there are people in the neighborhood who can help us define the vision. And because even if we do get the resiliency thing figured out, there still is a programmatic component that needs to be figured out. There's still a way, right? So there's still maintenance that has to be figured out. There's still funding. So our suspicion is that there are a lot of people in this community who have way more experience and expertise of these things than we do. So,
yeah. I mean, I think again, what we're looking, which is, I think what, I don't know, at least I'm hearing is that the community is really interested in something happening in the space. And, whether, and also interested in it providing like resiliency for stormwater in the area. And those are all things that we're completely 100% behind. I mean, the truth of the matter is that at this point, we've kind of taken the theoretical conversations with these different people, let's call them, so far, that everyone now is saying you can't really go any further unless you have the backing of the community. The community board is step one for that, and until you find out what the stance of the Port Authority is on this. So it's not about, a kind of like, I don't think we need like a flag that says like, community board one is, 100% for this project, but I think it's a kind of acknowledgement and I guess nod that you would be interested in something happening in this space.
Yeah.
That I think would, yeah.
Okay, so could I suggest to the committee and see if maybe we could take a straw poll. How about a resolution conceptually supporting doing something with this space to turn it into potentially a usable park and a resiliency site for the neighborhood? But we should also point out that we want to continue to work with them, and we strongly encourage them to do the type of outreach that they're talking about doing anyway. So I think we could give them that degree of support at this stage. At least that's my view. So who would be opposed to that? Let's start with that.
Paul, it kind of depends. Something of this magnitude should really have we should really have a town hall on it, and not just the few committee members here kind of making a decision. I believe we should hold off. We could just say something like I said earlier. We agree. We would like to see something conceptually as a park at some point without commenting at all on this specific design. We think it should be mentioned as well, as you said. But I think we need to schedule a town hall for this, and however we do that virtually, I don't know. But something this massive, I think, requires
maybe we could put
vote.
that into the same resolution.
Yeah, Paul, I would just argue that's exactly what you just said. And I think Mark just repeated it. I think that was exactly what you were saying. I think you were in accord. And I would second that idea that you're supportive of the concept of a park, and resiliency feature at this point, and you encourage them to go forward. I don't see.
Not specifically this design.
No one said this design.
I don't want the language. I don't want the language to be vague or inaccurate, to be misinterpreted that we're supporting this specific design. We're supporting a concept of a park with resiliency. That's it.
Oh, we just said that now 3 times, but anyway.
You got the word verbiage is important here.
I couldn't agree more, and we've all said the word concept.
Conceptual agreement with pursuing a park and resiliency site in this, what do we call it?
Diana can maybe help us on that. She's good at that kind of thing.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I think what Paul is saying is, I think he's on the right track. And I mean, I think the point is that we support the concept of a park and resiliency resource at this location. But before the board can make any definitive or comment on any specific details or any specific proposal for design, et cetera, the board would want to see more engagement with the local residents, including something like a town hall event.
Right.
Thank you, Diana. Hey, Paul.
And we could say we applaud them and we think you know, there's a lot to be said, but yes, we need to continue to work on this together.
We need to say something about the work that's been brought to us and the work that they're doing, and that we encourage and support that.
Yes, I
Agreed.
think we should
Right.
throw them
that we
the
wanna make-
kudos that everyone was talking about.
And that we want to make introductions to other people that could move this along, you know, and the idea is it's conceptual, but to introductions to move it along. I mean, to me, this seems to, you know, to go into, you know, people that are working on resiliency and cisterns all over the world. This, I mean, New York needs one of these. We know we do.
Yes, so we'll put that in the resolution. The community board is happy to try to be helpful in spreading the word on this and enabling many more people to get involved and be helpful on this project. All right.
That
Hey,
sounds
Paul.
almost like we're kind of half supporting it. That's the language I'm worried about. What Diana said before that was, I think, perfect.
All right, let's work on it. We don't have to come up with every word right now.
And then we can vote on the exact language, and we'll see what the committee has to, how the committee votes.
I do think it would be helpful, though, to specifically state that we want to encourage them to study specific aspects like the resiliency plan further, and to come back to us with further information so that they have a document to go back to their consultants with to be able to move it forward on their end.
That would be helpful.
It just might be,
for us.
yeah, it might be something that you need our support though before people put a lot more time into it. Is what we're also hearing.
Okay,
Yes.
that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul,
Yes, who's that?
it's Andrew.
Yes.
Once we finalize and vote on the resolution, I'd just like to make one other point about what I see as our potential role.
Okay, but you want to do that after?
Yes.
Okay, it's good enough. Okay, Diana, so you think you have something about roughly where we are on this?
I do, yeah. That CB1 supports conceptually the idea of a park and resiliency resource at this location. We applaud, encourage, and support the work that has been done so far. That's more so commenting on the effort that has been made here rather than any specific design. And before CB1 can support any specific design, we would want to see more community engagement, including something like a town hall event. And I don't know if this is something that's still up for debate, but that CB1 is willing to help connect these folks to residents or any resources that they need
Sorry,
in that engagement attempt.
Sorry, what do we envision? So I agree public engagement and public charrettes are important, but it seems a little premature to be referencing town halls at this stage. There just seem to be so many steps that would happen before we potentially have a formal process such as a town hall.
So would you want to say public discussion?
No, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. At some point, there has to be a town hall. It's just saying that there needs to be one. It's not saying when. I mean, this is a massive project that will require that at some point.
Yeah, I personally don't think we need to go deep into a procedural discussion at the moment, but if the group feels strongly, I'll back off. I don't know what a town hall delivers at this particular stage.
So do you want to vote on a different word like public, different two words like public engagement? I mean,
Just say a town hall at some
Well,
point.
I don't think everyone agrees with you, Mark, so I think.
Yeah,
Paul
a
would
town
have to
hall
handle
is
that.
when the Port Authority says we want to do this.
Exactly.
I would feel more comfortable with
That's
public
the
engagement.
problem we always have. We have
I have
an
a motion to
opportunity here.
change, or I don't know what
the
what
cart
the
before the
process
horse.
is, but Paul, I would like to suggest public engagement. Do I have any support for that?
Paul, can I finish my point? That we always beefing and screaming about that these concepts come to us and it's a fait accompli. You know, we don't have to wait for a town hall to when the Port Authority comes to see us. We can get ahead of the game for once.
Well, I think these people are coming to us pretty early in the process.
So
All right. I think we have a general resolution that I'm ready to put together for a vote. If you're uncomfortable with it, Mark, you could vote against, and we could continue to discuss it at the full board. Okay. So Diana, do you have to call the roll or something?
Yeah, I'm going to do a roll call on this one. Paul Goldstein?
Yeah.
Andrew Seltzer?
Could we just read out what it says before we do this?
Give me 1 second. I opened a Word doc and started putting a few notes in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and share that if the wording is, I want everybody to be clear on that. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen.
Right.
Okay. So these are the notes that I have so far. CB1 supports the concept of a park and resiliency resource at this location. CB1 applauds, encourages, and supports the effort that has been made this far. Before CB1 can support any specific design, we would want to see more public engagement with local residents. And CB1 is willing to help in connecting the presenters with local resources to aid in that engagement.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if we put something in there that says that specifically encourage them to dive deeper into the resiliency concepts so that they have something to go back to their consultants with, to say, we need some real time here to study this now.
I think that's in there at the beginning.
Yeah, could we make it just a little broader than residents? We had talked about the first precinct, for example.
With relevant stakeholders.
Great. Yeah, perfect.
Good idea.
That's good language.
Yeah.
I would take out local residents and put relevant stakeholders.
That's fine.
Agreed.
Paul or everyone, is there any value to adding a whereas that the Waterfront Parks and Cultural Committee was presented with a vision for, redesigning, reworking this space to address 2 critical needs, park space and resiliency?
I think it's a good whereas, Andrew. I would support that. I mean, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
We don't need to reference how it was presented, just simply that a vision was presented to us.
Okay.
Yeah, boy, we wish we could find more resources like this. This is just invaluable.
We need your phone numbers because we've got other places that we've got to work on in this neighborhood.
What a hobby.
I hope that I would just wanted to say one thing about this, that, I think that it's all wonderful, but I think it's essential that the Department of Transportation and the Port Authority at some point and in the not too distant future really engage so that we really know, what's real here, because we're all excited.
So Alice, that's what I'd like to discuss after we vote on this resolution.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Are we ready to call it?
Yes.
Okay. Paul Goldstein?
Yes.
Andrew Zeltzer?
Yes.
Mark Amaruso?
No.
Alice Klein?
Yes.
Rosa Chang?
Yes.
Wendy Chapman? Wendy? Okay, I'll come back to Wendy. Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. For Wendy.
Did you get me? Yes.
I gotcha. Kathy Gupta?
Yes.
Elizabeth Lemire?
Yes.
Elizabeth Lewinson?
Yes.
Joe Lerner?
Yes.
Dennis Michalski?
Yes.
Okay. Anthony Notaro, I don't think he's on. Bob Townley, I don't think he's on. Richard Corman?
Yes.
And David Sheldon?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, great. Are we ready to, did you have anything else, Andrew, that you wanted to say about this before we move on to the last item on the agenda?
Yes. I'd like for us to consider a role and involvement that extends well beyond the resolution we just approved. You know, someone has come to us, as I said, with a vision for a plan that addresses two critical needs, park space and resiliency. And I mean, given the nature of our committee, it just feels as though we have a responsibility to lead the charge on this, not lead the charge as it relates to a specific plan, but I think we can approach the Port Authority. I think we can approach DOT. I think we can pull together the process and a project plan for determining what might be possible. And I think either sequentially in line with that or as part of that process, I think that's how we lead into or segue into the public engagement.
Don't you first think that the designers should be engaged in that process before we bring in the agencies here? I mean, I would think that they would want that kind of ability to start to, modify the project as however they would like after discussions with some of the city agencies. I mean, I might take it, one step at a time and allow that to happen before we then engage.
I don't know necessarily what the right sequence is, but I'd like to see our role extend beyond just the issuance of a resolution. I'd like to figure out how we, and either in direct coordination or indirect coordination with the team that's on the phone with us right now, how we develop a plan to move this forward, to move something forward.
I think the idea, Andrew, is you're saying this is an urgent need, especially because of resiliency, that we need to push it or it will just sit out there. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I'll leave others to describe the how to describe the need, but it's a community need. And I think this vision that's been presented to us should be seen by this committee as a call to action beyond a resolution.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm not looking to box out the folks that are on the call with us. I personally love their design. I love the grand vision, and I hope it's part of the dialogue, but I don't just want to issue a resolution and then assume someone else is leading it and we just kind of wait to hear back.
I just think you should have mentioned this before we voted so we could have incorporated it into the resolution possibly and gotten consensus to do these things, because we already adopted a resolution that does not include those elements and those specifics. So
does it need to be memorialized in a resolution, Paul?
Well, I mean, for the community board to take action on something, I think we said we supported conceptually. I don't know.
Paul?
Yes.
I think Andrew is right on. It's about time we get more aggressive in what we want to see and do. And we shouldn't just put up a piece of paper with words on it and then go away. He's right on. We have,
right.
We have to do something.
I agree with Andrew and Joe as well. We should have involvement beyond a mere resolution.
Okay.
It would be nice to do that. I don't know exactly what that entails, but I completely agree with Andrew.
I think
it means the board approaches the Port Authority, whoever. That's one idea.
All right. This is not all that different from what we discussed with the Brooklyn Bridge last month, where after the board passed a resolution in support of some ideas, we went back to some of the powers that be and told them what we thought. So I don't see why we couldn't do something like that again. And I guess I could raise that with Tammy and Alice and see if they're ready to do something like that as we did with Brooklyn Bridge Banks.
Why don't we take a vote and see how many people want to favor us being progressive and moving on and getting something done by our own?
And Paul, sorry, I would just cite my own experience with, ball fields and permits. There have been times where I've come to the community board seeking a resolution supporting that permits be allocated to use resolution full, but was I beyond resolution deliver the ask in the resolution, and I guess that's all I'm saying here. We passed a resolution around an idea. Now what's the execution plan in addition to what, or in conjunction or coordination with what the folks may be doing on their own? To me, it's the execution of what we're supporting.
If I may add, we're an agency in New York City, and we have the duty to do that, not to just sit back and do nothing and say to some artist or anybody else, you go on your own and do it. I think it's our job to do something like this.
I'm in full agreement, and I would support an effort after the release of the resolution to go back to the respective agencies to request a sit down to discuss this further and try to move it along, or at least see, what their perspective is so that they have to send a response back.
And there may be a point in time where, we're referencing, we've seen a vision where we are in a position to bring in the people that created the vision to help create, momentum, or to help share the vision around what's possible. It doesn't mean that we end up on that exact vision, but that might be the way we also incorporate people who have gotten us to this point.
I would agree with this approach. So why don't we bring it up with Tammy and, push forward on it if she agrees.
Okay, is that?
And if she doesn't, let's have a vote on it.
Can't imagine she won't, given that she's been very forceful.
I agree with you, but I think it's about time we get proactive in a lot of things that we just write words on paper.
I'm with you, Joe. I think it's great. Yep. No one would argue with action. That's terrific. Thanks.
I don't think we're saying anything other than this, but we just need to make sure we coordinate with the originators of this concept and not go beyond where they're ready to go.
I think that was the point, that we have to be.
It occurred to me. I don't know if that's their preference either.
I think we'll take any help they can get.
All right. Is that what you'd like us to do?
Well,
I mean, just from like a civilian point of view, like I think it would be great if CB1 got involved with like pushing resiliency in the area, and we would love to be involved and help in any way we can. But we also, we're also at a point where, we are very familiar with the site, and we do have a team of people who's kind of, could be ready to go when called to action. So I think we are definitely like a good resource.
Yeah, but to your question about whether or not it's what we want, I do think that we have taken things a bit as far as we know. We're kind of in uncharted waters for ourselves, right? We are designers, and we are sort of trying to be visionaries and imagine what can be possible, but the actual nuts and bolts of how things get done through the city, through the community, very much is a learning process for us. So for you guys to take a part of it that you feel comfortable pushing, however that gets defined, and if you feel it is within your capacity to push, then we would absolutely appreciate that, and we will help in any way that we can.
But also the thing about the project is it's very resilient and very malleable, and it doesn't have a client right now. Yeah, and so we can change it. The client is really the community, the city, and the Port Authority, and the DOT. So I think as soon as these parties start talking to each other about the site and the potential of the site, even if this project just gets used as a starting point for another vision to develop, I mean, we are okay with that, and we would be open to it. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's not. This is not like us carrying the Ballman Kapalova like torch to some finish. This is really about us, like, just like everybody else, wanting to do something with this place that's just been sitting dormant for 100 years. Like, everybody sees it, everybody says it sucks, but nobody's done anything about it. Yeah. And the Port Authority, like, I mean, it's like, I think everybody needs to start talking to each other for this for something to develop.
Yeah. You know? Right on. Let's go. Let's do it.
So, Paul, I would recommend that perhaps we make a joint committee at some point in the future with, you know, some of the agents we've described. But, you know, I think the Environmental Protection Committee could bring in the Office of Resiliency here, and it could be quite an interesting joint effort. So, just something to consider.
And one last comment. So, we voted on a resolution that references a vision that was presented to us. In our outreach to the various agencies, we're going to reference that, you know, we've been motivated to reach out and have a discussion about how to create more function and beauty from this space. And it was triggered by a vision that was presented to us. And then if you all are also having conversations and you reference that you presented a vision to Community Board 1, people will start connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a resolution in your hand.
So let's definitely let people know that, you know, you gained some support at the community board this evening, and this is just the beginning of a process.
Yeah.
And we're not going to sit on our hands, Joe.
Let's call Tammy and let the ball roll. And enough of words.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you guys for coming down and for all the work. Once again, thanks to the committee. And let's try to get through that last item on the agenda.
Paul, can I just interrupt for 1 second? Sorry. One thing, Dasha and Peter, I agree with Richard. Absolutely. It is a gift. And thank you for 2 years of effort on this. I don't know if you've read Under the Elevated by the Design Trust in partnership with DOT, but I think that would be an interesting read for you guys. And the other thing I would say is that Friends of the High Line has something called a High Line Network, which I'm not sure exactly how relevant it is to this project, but since it isn't it isn't quite the fit, but there might be enough cross connections to make it worthwhile looking into both of those resources. Just wanted to send that along. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Some of your resources are right here on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Committee, we do have one final item. Andrew is going to give a Hudson River Park Advisory Council update, and then I have a very brief announcement to add on to his report. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thanks, Paul. So I'll move through this pretty quickly. Again, a lot of this information is posted on the Hudson River Park Trust website under the Advisory Council section. So we had the last meeting on Tuesday, December 8th. The highlights of the agenda include the following. The Trust previewed an underwater ecological video program that they are launching. And essentially what they've done is they have outfitted traps with cameras and bait to lure fish toward the cameras or videos that they've installed. And the idea is to showcase river ecology to visitors of the park. And their plan is to create live stream videos so you can actually watch real time what's happening underwater. Secondly, they reported on a fish kill in the Hudson River. And for those who aren't familiar, a fish kill is a localized area where fish are dying. And it's typically seen in warm weather or other stresses like sewage overflows. The trust has a group of scientists investigating the area to try and determine the root cause, and they will come back to us with an update. In terms of programming, the trust reported that their virtual programming continues to be successful and draws participants from the 5 boroughs and beyond, and they will look to maintain a virtual component to their programming even when in-person activities resume. On the subject of in-park activities, they are looking at ways to safely structure and offer in-park activities, taking into account social distancing and other aspects of COVID compliance. On the design and construction front, Gansevoort Peninsula and the Meatpacking District, the construction documents are ready to bid and are expected to be released in January. Pier 97, which is at 57th Street and is part of the Clinton Cove infrastructure that connects Piers 95, 96, and 97. The construction documents are close to completion and they expect to put out for bids end of January. I would strongly encourage folks to take a look online. They've posted potential designs for that. It's somewhat akin to Pier 26 and it looks really spectacular. In terms of the ongoing issue of activity of bikes, both manual and electric, continues to be an issue, particularly on enforcement. DOT is planning to enhance signage throughout the bikeway. And the status is that they expect fabrication of signs during the winter and installation in the spring. So expect to see those starting to appear in a few months' time. With respect to the bylaws governing the advisory council, those are being reviewed and revised, and we expect those to be issued for review and comment by the council sometime probably in January or February. In terms of updates, so you may recall Pier 76, we've had discussions about the fact that the governor issued a decree for the police department to move the tow pound. They have identified a possible site or sites for moving that. And Community Board 4 has begun a conversation around interim uses on that pier in between tearing down the tow pound and coming up with a design for the long-term redevelopment of that pier. In terms of Pier 40 activity, construction activity, there are 4 areas of work: sprinkler rehabilitation, that's in process and should be done in about 6 months' time. The pile work continues and they expect the last phase, which is the northwest corner of the building, to be bid out in the spring. There is a roof project for the south side of the pier that they expect to be done in May that will allow the car parking activity to reopen. Facade work, they did an inspection about a year ago, number of loose bricks, open joints, and repair work that is required. They're working on the north side now, and they'll be moving around the building in different phases. And then the final point was the issue was raised of both through programming, outreach, and other aspects, trying to create more diversity throughout the park, whether it's types of programs, whether it's attracting different visitors to the park, whether it's the composition of the advisory council. So there will be more effort, energy, and focus over the next year in terms of addressing diversity across all activities of the park. That's it.
Okay. Any questions, comments on that before I add one item? Okay, let me just say that late this afternoon, the community board received an email from the trust advising that the fireboat Governor Alfred E. Smith will be docking for the season at Pier 25. It's a historic vessel, and it's been in service with FDNY since 1961. It's been in service for over 50 years, and I assume this would be a welcome development for people to know that another historic vessel is being docked over on the west side. Any comments on that? I saw a thumbs up.
When's it coming?
When is it coming? Let's see. We anticipate it will arrive this Friday, 12/18, weather depending, and will stay through May of 2021. So it'll be here for 5-6 months.
Cool. Will we be able to go and take a tour?
I guess we could find out, but I don't see why you couldn't certainly walk down there. I don't know if they allow people on the boat, but we'll have to find out.
Exciting. Thank you.
Okay.
Paul, I missed it. Where is it, Doc, please?
Pier 25, Hudson River Park.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We've completed our agenda. Anyone have any final comments before we move to adjourn? All right. Hearing none. Thank you all. I think we heard some good, exciting news tonight. So let's continue our work and hopefully, well, we know the battery park is opening in June, so that's good news. And the other one, we have to continue to see what develops there. Anyway, thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Good meeting.